With the world on fire by evil forces, with brave people in the Ukrainian trenches defending Western civilization, the heart of old Europe awoke at Notre-Dame de Paris. Free people dream of higher things, while Putin and the Russians destroy. The French people have shown how to recover a heritage, just as the Ukrainian people have showed us how to fight for what is virtuous. In the trenches, the Ukrainians, whose capital city is dedicated to Saint Michael the Archangel, hold the line for Western civilization. In Notre-Dame de Paris, leaders of the free world sang in Latin, that language that once united Europe. Sed libera nos a malo. Deliver us from evil.
Haunted all day by this story you told me earlier about on this recent trip last week. There was the young girl in her 20s.
Yeah, so this young girl, she'd already had a very tough childhood. She married a soldier who then went back to the front, but she became pregnant. She was incredibly excited. But because of these healthcare facilities had been destroyed, she couldn't get a scan done locally. So she'd had to travel to Kherson to get a scan done. Driving back, and they got a puncture in the car, stopped off at a garage, and a Russian missile hit the garage. Devastation throughout. Several people killed instantly. The car she was in was incredibly damaged. Had to pull her out. There was a lot of other vehicles on fire, and there was a young soldier trapped inside this cafe, and they couldn't get him out. And she heard him basically saying his last words, and he burned to death. But as she's lying there as well, she's in a lot of pain. She was bleeding, and it became very apparent that she had lost the baby. But that's just one example of somebody just wanting to live their life in peace. You know, wanting to just raise a family. You know, a lot of Ukrainians live like farmsteads, really. You know, land is incredibly important to Ukrainians.
Money, money, money.
Ukraine exposes Washington's corruption and lies. Many Americans, even well-educated ones, believe the U.S. government has poured billions into Ukraine.
It's not true! It's not true!
Most so-called Ukraine aid is just a valuation of old weapons being sent. And even then, Biden often withholds parts of what's been allocated. This creates a perfect storm of deception. Biden sends as little as possible to Ukraine, but makes it appear like he's doing much more.
As long as it takes.
I work all night, I work all day to pay the bills I have to pay.
As a result, Americans grow frustrated with Ukraine, wrongly believing it's costing them far more than it is. The truth? Biden won't let Ukraine win, and his actions are turning Americans against Ukraine. A well-armed freedom stops tyranny, and the global elite, including Biden, are doing their best to ensure Ukraine is not armed.
It's a rich man's world.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We podolajemy, we podolajemy, powiedzmy podajemy. O głęboko w moim sercu ja wierzę, powiedzmy podajemy. We shall overcome.
Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, two entertainers turned presidents, were poised to collaborate against corruption. Until,
when what, to my wondering eyes, should appear,
twin brothers Alexander and Eugene Vindman intervened. In July 2019, the Washington Post exposed questionable Biden family dealings in Russia and Ukraine. Days later, Trump spoke with Zelensky. On the call, he naturally referenced the concerns he saw in the Post. This did not sit well with the unelected Vindman brothers, both assigned to the White House by the military. Grabbing the cloak of whistleblowers, they exposed the call, claiming to act in Ukraine's best interest, despite lacking any authority to do so. The call's transcript shows Trump and Zelensky heartily agreeing that Angela Merkel and other Western leaders were in bed with Russia. The Vindmans' actions made Ukraine a toxic word in Washington. Wrongly, Trump's team became afraid of working with Zelensky, though they continued to sanction Russia and send weapons. As Russia bombs Ukraine today, the Vindmans' interference looms large, using Ukraine in their own political games. But hey, while Ukraine burns, it's worked out well for the Vindmans. One of them was just elected to Congress, and we are not allowed to criticize them.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Burisma isn't the only anti-Ukraine company linked to Hunter Biden. In 2019 and 2020, then President Trump and Ukrainian officials worked together to block a Chinese firm, Sky Rizon, from buying Motor Sich, a Ukrainian helicopter maker named after a Cossack word for the fortification of free people. Now enter Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden and Christopher Hines, stepson of former Secretary of State John Kerry, created a Beijing-based firm called BHR Partners. BHR had a strategic partnership with AVIC, a major shareholder in Sky Rizon, which Ukrainian security services had accused of an enemy plot against Ukraine. So, what's the problem? The greedy shenanigans of wealthy elite Americans have created a miasma of distrust about Ukraine. Free Ukrainians working to delete corruption get blamed for Biden family games with Beijing and Moscow. Here's the reality. Since 2014, Ukrainians have been actively kicking corrupt forces out of their country. Unable to plunder Ukraine anymore, the corrupt global elite now fight to get it back, with Putin leading the charge, backed by North Korean missiles and Iranian drones. Ukrainians are fighting both Moscow evil and Washington corruption. What side are you on?
Oh, which side are you on? Good morning, America, how are you?
Burisma isn't Ukrainian, it's Russian. Its CEO opposed Ukraine's Maidan revolution, benefited from Putin's annexation of Crimea, and paid millions to Hunter Biden, while his father blocked Ukraine from winning. In 2014, Burisma's CEO served in the pro-Kremlin Yanukovych government, the same corrupt regime Ukrainians ousted during Maidan. When Yanukovych fled to Russia around February 24, 2014, his cabinet, including Burisma's CEO, joined him. By March, as Putin seized Crimea, where Burisma held gas fields, Hunter Biden's partner, Devon Archer, was meeting with Burisma in Moscow. Soon after, Burisma was paying millions to Vice President Biden's son, while the Obama-Biden administration stood by, as Russia invaded Ukraine.
Pro-Russia troops surrounding Ukrainian bases.
In May 2019, the New York Times revealed Burisma's payments to Hunter Biden. A month later, Zelensky made one of those reporters his press secretary. In July, the Washington Post detailed Biden family dealings in Russia and Ukraine. 2 days later, Trump obliquely brought up Burisma on a call with Zelensky. Agreeing that Merkel was helping Putin, Trump and Zelensky seemed ready to cooperate, until two bureaucratic twin brothers intervened. More on that soon. But for now, one fact is clear.
Burisma is not Ukrainian.
Energy firm Burisma.
6 voices who can bridge the MAGA-Ukraine divide. Writing in the Hill newspaper, Joe Lindsley, American in Ukraine, suggests 3 Ukrainians and 3 Americans, plus 1 wild card, who can help the new Trump administration see Ukraine as a vital partner in the cause of freedom and anti-corruption. These 7 people from both Ukraine and the U.S. can cut through media barriers and show MAGA world that Ukrainians are fighting the worst kind of illegal immigrants, the kind armed with ballistic missiles, and the worst type of deep state in the Kremlin. Read the full story at The Hill.
Oh, which side are you on?
If you think that Victoria Nuland created Ukraine's Maidan, aka Public Square Revolution, then you must also believe that the Kremlin created MAGA. I once worked for Lord Charles Williams, Baron of Elville, whose wife, the Lady Jane Williams, was Churchill's last private secretary. Over tea in her Kensington flat, Lady Williams shared stories with a 23-year-old me. She described Churchill's drinking as a day-long measured affair. He could be challenging, dictating speeches from the bath, but, as she said, we were there to help a great man.
But you need to be a monster to defeat Hitler.
During a brutal missile assault on Kharkiv, I thought to write her.
He was a relentless worker.
Only to learn she had died in 2023. She lived to see her son, the Archbishop of Canterbury, crowned King Charles III. Recently, amid a Kyiv blackout, I walked dark streets, listening to Erik Larsson's The Splendid and the Vile about the Blitz. As the narrator mentioned her ladyship's uncle, Air Chief Marshal Charles Portal, I saw Bar Sir Winston Churchill, a small portal of light, conversation, and laughter. Inside, beneath Winston's portrait, I sipped a gin cocktail, listening to Larsson's account of Britain's survival. I imagined the Joe Rogans of the 1930s telling Churchill, as today's skeptics tell Ukraine, give up your freedom, you're going to get us all killed. But Ukraine is a nation of Churchills, holding the line for the free world and proving tyrants can be stopped. Let's break down some of the things Rogan's guests often say about Ukraine.
1.
Victoria Nuland created the Maidan Revolution.
But Victoria Nuland, who's was at the State Department.
That's like saying the Kremlin created MAGA. Completely absurd. Biden
2.
supports Ukraine because of Burisma. Funny how pro-Kremlin Burisma, which opposed Ukraine's Maidan revolution, paid the Biden family while Biden, in 2014, did nothing to help Ukraine.
3.
The military-industrial complex is pushing for this war.
Military-industrial complex. They make a lot of money.
Actually, defense companies profit more from a long, drawn-out war than a swift Ukrainian victory.
4.
Helping Ukraine makes World War III more likely. Imagine if Russia, supported by Iran, China, North Korea, and Hamas, controlled the largest country in Europe with key ingredients for semiconductors. Fortunately, Ukrainians routinely cross Putin's red lines and they are still standing.
5.
The Ukrainian people want no part of this. Seriously? Could a nation endure this long hell without the will of its people? Maybe you will not agree with supporting Ukraine, but could you at least listen to some extraordinary Ukrainian voices and hear their stories?
If you invite me on your podcast, we could discuss them like free men.
We go to Ukraine to check in with Joseph Lindsley.
He's the world's most interesting man. Let's go to Ukraine.
800 days. Must feel like it to you.
Thank you, Joseph, for making us cry this morning.
Hello from Odessa. Hey, Bob, good morning to you. Hello from Kyiv. 3 missiles hitting in quick succession in a way that I've never heard before. Joe Lindsley with our...
Well, corruption is a very big word.
It was not like a freak out for me. Just imagine winter.
Freedom is our religion.
Like, I have shivers right now because
you defeated Roger Federer when he was #1.
Other Ukrainian and American reports are fair to good, but Joe Lindsley always reaches an excellent standard.
I appreciate Joseph's passion for truth, justice, and the goodness of it.
Joe covers so many fascinating and crucial Ukrainian cultural topics missed by others.
One of the best journalists who provides insight into how war is actually experienced by Ukrainians.
Every weekday, 1,000 days and counting. Join the journey from Ukraine with Chicago's WGN Radio.
We invite you to follow our channel, the only American show reporting live from Ukraine every day.